Ever wonder if a guy is really into you or just playing it cool? The truth is, when a man truly likes you, he doesn't always act the way you'd expect. In fact, he'll start doing weird little things that seem confusing, like getting awkward around you, asking deep, random questions, or making quiet sacrifices without even mentioning them. These aren't coincidences, they're emotional clues. In this speech, I'm exposing the 6 weird things men do only when they're genuinely into you, so you can stop second-guessing and start seeing the truth. When a guy is truly into you, something shifts in his demeanor that's often misread, especially in the early stages. Most people expect attraction to look smooth, confident, maybe even a little cocky, but when emotions are real, the rules change. One of the weirdest yet most telling behaviors a man exhibits when he's genuinely interested is sudden awkwardness. This isn't shyness in the generic sense, it's targeted awkwardness that only shows up around you. You might notice that this guy who's charismatic and composed with everyone else becomes oddly quiet, fumbles over his words, or makes silly jokes when you're around. It's confusing because it doesn't match the confident guy persona he might carry in other spaces. But if you observe closely, this awkwardness is not a sign of disinterest. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Here's what's really happening beneath the surface. When a man sees a woman as someone he truly values, someone he doesn't want to mess things up with, he experiences emotional pressure. He's no longer just being himself around a friend or someone he finds attractive. Now he's navigating the possibility of something meaningful. And meaning brings vulnerability. Vulnerability often looks like hesitation, overthinking, or missteps. He may second-guess his words, try too hard to be funny, or even freeze up when he wants to say something sweet. This is his nervous system processing the emotional significance of your presence. People tend to underestimate how much performance anxiety plays a role in courtship. Just as you might get butterflies before a job interview or a big speech, he's experiencing the same emotional turbulence when he's with someone who matters. He wants to be perceived a certain way, he wants to impress, but he also doesn't want to risk rejection or appear too eager. This internal tug-of-war creates a cocktail of physical and emotional symptoms that manifest as weird behaviors. Talking too fast, laughing at inappropriate times, losing his train of thought, or making bizarre comments that later leave him cringing in bed. Another important piece is how much a man's self-image is challenged in your presence. If he's into you, it means you hold the power to affirm or shake how he sees himself. If you're someone he respects, admires, or even sees as out of his league, then his ego gets placed in a vulnerable position. And when the ego feels exposed, the brain instinctively triggers defense mechanisms. For some men, that means retreating into awkwardness. They might come off disinterested or even aloof when, in reality, they're terrified of saying the wrong thing or moving too fast. You become the mirror reflecting back a version of themselves they desperately want to be seen as, but aren't sure if they measure up to. It's also why some guys flirt flawlessly with women they have no serious intentions with, but suddenly choke around someone they're emotionally invested in. When there's nothing to lose, charm flows freely. But when the stakes are high, performance anxiety creeps in. That's why one of the most reliable signs a man is genuinely into you is when his usual confidence takes a subtle hit. He might still be bold in his career, assertive with friends, and humorous in groups, but when it's just the two of you, you might see him stumble, hesitate, or behave out of character. This awkward behavior is even more noticeable when he's not used to being. A man who's spent most of his life avoiding emotional depth might find himself suddenly thrown off when real feelings arise. He might say the wrong thing, then spend hours overthinking it. He might apologize unnecessarily or seek reassurance for things that didn't seem like a big deal. That's not immaturity, it's emotional sincerity attempting to break through years of emotional detachment. It's important to understand that this isn't weakness, it's courage in an unfamiliar language. Women often miss these cues because they're conditioned to associate interest with boldness. But real connection doesn't always come with polished delivery. Sometimes it's the awkward pause between compliments, the bashful smile after an eye lock, or the strange moment where he offers help, then instantly acts like it was no big deal. These moments aren't accidental, they're emotional tells. They're the invisible ink of early attraction. A man who's truly into you will often fight a silent battle between wanting to connect and fearing that he's not enough. Here's another layer that makes this even more fascinating. Awkwardness is often accompanied by overcompensation. He might try to balance his nerves by doing something exaggerated, like bragging about his achievements or teasing you in a playful but slightly off-key way. These moves aren't meant to be arrogant, they're shields. He's trying to steer the spotlight away from his inner chaos by projecting control or humor. But underneath the showmanship is a man trying to steady himself in the emotional turbulence your presence creates. Even in digital interactions, texts, DMs, voice notes, you might see this awkward tell emerge. He may take longer to reply to your messages because he's overthinking every word. He may send oddly formal or overly detailed responses trying to get it right. Or he might do the opposite, send random memes or awkward emojis in an attempt to be light-hearted when in fact he's deeply invested. Don't be quick to write this off as inconsistency. It's more likely that he's balancing vulnerability with the fear of exposing too much too soon. The key is not to confuse this kind of awkwardness with lack of interest. Disinterest is usually clean and consistent. Short replies, lack of effort, no eye contact, no follow-up. Awkward attraction, on the other hand, is messy, layered, and filled with emotional friction. And that friction is evidence of depth. A man who's genuinely into you is not going to be flawless in his delivery because love, or the potential of it, disrupts our systems in beautiful, imperfect ways. So if you're dealing with a man who seems to act strange only around you, who's composed with others but fidgety in your space, pay close attention. That awkwardness may be the most honest thing about his feelings. It's not a flaw to fix, it's a clue to read. When a man is truly into you, he won't be satisfied with surface-level conversations. He wants to break through the noise, get past the generic, and touch something real. That's why one of the most unusual yet revealing signs of genuine interest is when he starts asking strange, deeply specific questions. These aren't the usual, "What's your favorite movie?" or "What do you do for work?" kinds of questions. They often come out of nowhere, catch you off guard, and make you think. They might sound like, "What's the most courageous thing you've ever done?" or "What's a dream you gave up on?" These questions may seem random, but they're not. They're emotional doorways, and a man who asks them is trying to step inside your world, not just peek through the window. The reason this behavior is so weird is because it defies the standard dating script. Most men stick to safe, socially acceptable topics, especially early on, but when a man is genuinely captivated by you, he becomes curious, not just about what you do or how you look, but about who you are. And that curiosity drives him to ask questions that reach beyond the surface. He wants to know what drives you, what scares you, what moments shaped you. He's trying to map the emotional terrain of your life because understanding you helps him feel closer and more connected. It's not just about finding shared interests, it's about emotional intimacy. What's fascinating is how these questions often arrive out of left field. You might be talking about something mundane like your favorite pizza topping, and he'll suddenly ask, "Do you believe people can change?" or "What's something most people misunderstand about you?" These questions are not typical, and they don't come from a playbook. They come from a place of sincere emotional investment. He's not asking to impress you. He's asking to understand you. He wants to get to the parts of you that other people overlook. That's why these questions are often personal, even philosophical. They aren't designed for casual conversation. They're invitations for connection. It's important to recognize that these moments aren't always smooth. Sometimes the questions come out awkwardly. He might fumble the wording or quickly backtrack, worried he's overstepped. But even that clumsiness is revealing. It shows he cares enough to risk discomfort. He's stepping outside the comfort zone of typical dating behavior, hoping to strike something meaningful. He might ask you about your childhood, your relationship with your parents, or your biggest regret. These aren't questions you'd expect from someone who's just trying to pass the time. They're the questions of someone who's emotionally engaged. This kind of behavior is rare because it requires vulnerability on his part too. By asking these specific and often deep questions, he's signaling something else. He's ready to be seen too. He's laying the groundwork for emotional reciprocity. He's saying, "I'm not here just for fun, I'm here for something real." These questions open the door for two-way emotional exchange. The more open and honest your answers, the more likely he is to follow suit. It becomes a slow dance of disclosure, an emotional rhythm where trust is built layer by layer. Let's also consider how this shows up digitally. If he's texting you at night with questions like, "What's been on your mind lately?" or "If you could relive one day from your life, which one would it be?" You're not just chatting, you're building emotional intimacy. These aren't just "let's talk" texts, they're "I want to know you" texts. That kind of intentional conversation sets a different tone for the entire connection. It breaks the mold of superficial dating culture and signals that he sees you as more than a temporary distraction. One of the most powerful things about this behavior is that it creates emotional safety. When a man asks these deep, specific questions, he's showing you that he values substance over performance. He's not trying to impress you with what he has, he's trying to impress you with what he sees in you. That's rare. And when you recognize it, you'll start to see these odd questions as signs of care, not confusion. It may feel weird at first, almost like the connection is moving too quickly into vulnerable territory, but that's where the real magic happens, because what he's doing is setting a tone that invites authenticity from both sides. There's also something inherently flattering about being asked these kinds of questions. It tells you that you're not just another person in his dating pool. You've sparked something in him that makes him want to know your layers. He's not satisfied with just admiring your appearance or enjoying your company. He wants to discover your values, your dreams, your fears, the unfiltered truth of who you are. That level of curiosity is a deeply human form of love in the making. It's not about manipulation. It's not about saying the right thing. It's about seeing and being seen. Now, here's a key distinction to make. This behavior only matters if it's consistent with other signs of investment. If a guy is throwing out deep questions but disappearing for days or avoiding emotional responsibility, then those questions are a performance. But when paired with consistency, follow-through, and emotional attentiveness, these oddly specific questions are one of the most authentic signs that he's falling, not just for your body or your charm, but for you. He's not just interested in what makes you attractive. He's interested in what makes you, you. Some women, especially those used to emotionally unavailable men, might feel skeptical of this behavior at first. It can feel disarming. Why is he asking such personal things? What does he want from me? But that skepticism often comes from having dealt with people who didn't want to know you. So when someone comes along who does, who genuinely wants to listen to the raw, real, even painful parts, it can feel suspicious. But the very weirdness of it is the point. The unusualness of these questions is the evidence that this connection isn't following the usual script. These conversations build emotional glue. The more moments you share that dive beneath the surface, the more you both start to feel like this isn't casual anymore. That's the shift he's looking for. He's not trying to jump into something fast. He's trying to anchor into something real. And in a world full of surface-level interest, these deeper, more specific questions are his way of signaling that you're different, that this is different. Ultimately, the man who asks you use strange, meaningful questions is trying to build a relationship, not just a romance. He's not trying to play it cool. He's trying to create connection. And while the behavior might seem odd or out of place at first, it's actually one of the most beautiful signs that he's already investing emotionally. He's not just dating you. He's studying you, admiring you, and inviting you to share a part of yourself that most people never bother to ask about. When a man is genuinely into you, his behavior won't always follow a logical pattern. In fact, one of the clearest but strangest signs of his true feelings is that he'll begin doing things for you that seem oddly out of place. Small sacrifices, thoughtful gestures, or acts of service that don't make much sense unless you look at them through the lens of emotional investment. These aren't the grand romantic moves you see in movies. They're subtle, often inconvenient, and strangely specific. But they're real, and what's even more telling, he doesn't expect credit for them. This kind of behavior goes deeper than just wanting to be liked. It's a reflection of the shift that happens inside a man when he starts to care. When a guy is just casually dating or keeping things light, he might do things to impress you, paying for dinner, offering compliments, or texting consistently. But when it gets serious, when his emotions start anchoring into you, he begins doing things that cost him something: time, energy, comfort. And he does them quietly, often without calling attention to them, because they come from a place of sincerity, not strategy. Let's say you're feeling sick and mention it in passing. A guy who's just being polite might say, "Hope you feel better soon." But a guy who's into you might Uber you soup or ask what meds you're taking and offer to drop them off. Maybe he's driving out of his way to make that happen. Maybe he rearranged his plans or went to multiple stores, but he won't make a big show of it. He'll just say something like, "No worries, I was near there anyway," or even when he wasn't. That's what makes it so strange. It's not the act itself, but how quietly he does it. This low-key sacrifice is how you spot emotional effort. When a man is operating from a place of genuine feeling, he doesn't need to talk about what he's doing, he just does it. His priority shifts from, what do I get out of this, to, how can I make her life better, even in small ways. It might be something as simple as walking you to your car, even when it's inconvenient, or texting to check you got home safe, even though he's exhausted. These little things might look unimportant from the outside, but they are rich in meaning. They show that he's starting to internalize your well-being as part of his concern. What's fascinating is how these gestures don't always align with what a man normally values. He might hate long phone calls, but if he knows you're going through something, he'll stay on the line longer than usual. He might hate shopping, but if you mention needing something specific, he'll go get it without hesitation. He's not doing these things to win points. He's doing them because he's thinking about you in a sustained, caring way. He's paying attention to your comfort, not because he has to, but because it's become natural to want to. This is when you start to see his ego shrink in favor of your needs. And it's not weakness, it's actually a massive indicator of emotional maturity. A man who is truly invested stops operating from a transactional mindset. He's not doing things and keeping a mental scorecard. He's not asking, what do I get in return? Because to him, doing these odd little things is the return, making you smile, helping you feel supported, being someone you can rely on. These moments reinforce his emotional bond to you. That's the reward. Not praise, not applause, just the knowledge that you're better off because of him. Even more interesting is that these sacrifices often don't get noticed at first. They're easy to overlook because they're not flashy. A woman might assume he's just being nice or he's trying to get in her good graces, but when the behavior is consistent and quiet, it becomes clear this man is moving differently around you. He's adjusting his life to accommodate yours, even in small ways. That's not casual. That's commitment in its earliest form. This behavior also reveals something about how men fall in love. Many men are taught to express care through action, not words. So while he may not say, I'm falling for you, he'll show up at the airport without being asked. He'll remember the exact snack you said you liked a month ago. He'll fix something for you even if you didn't realize it was broken. These things don't always feel romantic in the stereotypical sense, but they are full of meaning. They represent his emotional availability, not just in theory, but in practice. And here's where the emotional risk comes in. Doing things for someone without expecting anything back is vulnerable. It opens him up to being taken for granted. And many men are terrified of that. So when a guy still does it, still chooses to give, help, show up, it means he's accepted that risk. That's not weakness, that's strength. He's saying, I care enough to give without guarantees. That's not just emotional investment, it's emotional bravery. But it's easy to miss all of this if you're only looking for the big declarations. If you're waiting for a man to write poetry, book trips, or say the words, I'm in love, you might overlook the small actions that carry the same weight. The quiet sacrifices, the strange but thoughtful gestures, the things that make you wonder, why would he do that? That's your answer, because he's into you, because something in him has already decided that your happiness matters to him. It's also worth noting that some of these actions might feel out of character for him. He may not be the guy who usually does favors, offers help, or goes out of his way for others. But with you, the rules change. That's what makes it weird. He might even seem surprised by his own behavior. He might joke about it. I don't know why I'm doing this, or I never do stuff like this for people. And that's exactly why it matters. You're seeing him shift his identity in real time to include you in his circle of care. That's not random. That's rare. Ultimately, the guy who goes out of his way for you, quietly without fanfare, is showing you something more profound than a compliment ever could. He's revealing where his heart is headed, toward you. His time, his effort, and his subtle sacrifices are his way of saying you matter, even if he hasn't found the words yet. These actions are the prelude to love. Not always dramatic, not always explained, but always intentional. And when you recognize that, you begin to understand the language of someone who's truly emotionally invested, not in what he says, but in what he quietly chooses to do.